Make you the host, Jitesh.
Mm-hmm.
So changing host. You should have the time, as they say.
Okay. Let me see. I should, if I'm the host, I should be able to say speaker view. And then how do I share my, share screen. Right there. Okay, share screen. And how do I say desktop? Yeah, desktop one. Okay. Let me know if you guys see it.
I see it.
Good. Excellent. Okay, how do I, this thing is blocking my, how do I make it like slide up and not block anything?
Drag it out of the way. Or does it have, we don't see it, so does it have a pin in it to hide it?
Okay, I just took it up to the screen above. So that's good. That's good. All right. Well, welcome, guys and gals. My name is Jitesh Doshi. In the days before COVID, I used to roam the streets of Jacksonville, but I guess nowadays we don't do that. I run a business here in Jacksonville. It's called Spinspire. And speaking of YouTube channels, I have a YouTube channel on which I have more than 24 Svelte videos, and that is also called Spinspire. So if you go to, if you can see my screen, just go to youtube.com/Spinspire, and you will see my channel. And there are, I'm going to put a link to that here in chat. So yeah, and we will talk about Svelte, of course. So that's my video speaking, not me. So here's the link to my channel, and there's a long playlist. There's a specific playlist called Svelte.js series, and there are lots of them. And then generally, so there are 26 videos in that series. You can watch all of them. Two specifically that I want to draw your attention to is why learn Svelte and how to learn Svelte. So those are the two I would recommend you to start with: why learn Svelte and how to learn Svelte, and then the rest of them you can go in any order. Okay, all right. So that's all I wanted to say about that. So let's talk about what is Svelte, why we should learn it, etc., etc. But before that, I wanted to just see who all we have in the room, as they say. So we have David and Brady. Good to meet you. And of course, I know Josh is sitting actually close by. Gary, Rohit, and I'm not sure if there is another name. And Jyoti, I know him. Kesha, and then there are two other people whose names are not showing up. So I would generally recommend everybody, if you can. I mean, it would be nice if you guys can turn on the webcams. It's kind of nice to see the reactions of people. And the interaction goes better, of course. So thank you for doing that. And has anybody here actually used Svelte, even for a toy project?
No.
Never.
Okay, look, Josh has, so that's good. All right, so Svelte is basically an alternative to React and Vue and Angular. That's basically the best way to describe it, but it takes a very different approach. It takes a compiler approach instead of a runtime library approach, and that has many consequences. So let me just go back to that chance. I have a presentation. I'm not going to play that presentation. A video has been recorded, a recorded video. I'm not going to play that, but linked to it is a Google presentation, which is why learn Svelte. And if I go to videos, and one of them is why. Okay, why learn Svelte? This one, yeah. So if I open that again, I'm not going to play this, but I am. There is a. It links to a Google presentation that is what I'm interested in. So this one. Gosh, everything gets slower once you get on Zoom. Zoom slows everything down. So here, so this is the presentation I was interested in. If you go to the Why Learn Svelte YouTube video, it links to a Google presentation, and this is that. It's of course public. So, and there are many reasons: business justification, technical justification, personal reasons, etc., etc. So I recommend you to actually look at it. There's also another one next to it called How to Learn Svelte, and that one also I would recommend you take a look at. Okay, but of course this is not a pre-recorded presentation. This is a live presentation. So why should we go and play some of those? So let's not any pre-recorded doesn't make sense. So let's take a look at Svelte, what it can do. Okay. So first of all, we will go to svelte.dev, and there is a repo there. So first, I mean, if you see my How to Learn Svelte video, you will see that I reference this tutorial. There is a tutorial. You should go through the tutorial. It takes, I mean, and I in my video and in my presentation, I also specify which ones you can skip initially when you're doing it. So if you follow that roadmap, it will take you 3-4 hours total to learn Svelte. Okay, because there are some things that you don't need in the beginning, you can skip that, and that this will take about 3 hours. It took me 3 hours, even though I was completely uninitiated. Okay, now, but right now for this demo, I'm going to use the REPL. Okay, so REPL is very simple. By the way, feel free to interrupt at any time. I would love interruptions. Okay, so this REPL basically allows you to enter Svelte code and show you the output in real time. So for more advanced stuff, you cannot do it. It's not advisable to do it here. It's better to simply do it in VS Code or some such IDE. So this is the simplest Hello World program. As you can see, and let me make this bigger. Oops, not smaller, bigger. Can you see it? Everybody can see it? Okay, good. So a Svelte program, this is app.svelte, and a Svelte program has an extension .svelte. Sorry, I should say a Svelte component, not program. Svelte component is packaged as a .svelte file, and it has 3 parts. It has script, it has HTML, and it can also have style. And the styles would be like angle bracket style, like this. And you can put some styles. We'll look at it. If you give this a class, foo, then you can say .foo is color red, and that makes it red. So, but keep in mind, all styling is scoped, meaning to say, if you have .foo a class elsewhere outside of this component, it will not be affected. So all styling is local. Well, not all. It is possible to make it is possible for you to create global styling, but then you will have to actually specifically say global something, global dev, and then you would have to do it this way. So that's how you make global styling inside a component, but most of the time you don't want to do that. So just keep that in mind. Also, styling by default is local. So you have JavaScript, you have style, CSS, and you have HTML. This is the reason why I say Svelte is so easy to learn. You already know these 3 things, okay? And you, by the time you are done with this, hopefully you will be convinced that there is very, very little, a little bit, but you have to learn more on top of that, not much, which is a big contrast against things like Angular or React, even Vue, I would say, because you have to learn a whole bunch of new things. Now, why is this simple? You set a variable, assign it a value. You use that variable in curly braces in your HTML. What could be simpler than that? But you might say, hey, but Jitesh, come on. Life is not that simple. Usually we need to, these variables are dynamic, they change. So how should we handle that? So let's do that. Let's make these variables dynamic. Oops, sorry. Let me undo that. Yeah. So let's get rid of this classroom. So what if this variable was changing? Let's change it. Let me create a button. Button change name. That's the name of the button. That's the value of the title of the button. And if on this, clicking this button, we can trigger a handler by saying on : click. I like this naming convention over React. In React, it is on capital C click. This one is very clear. Everything is lowercase. Seems to follow the spirit of HTML. So this obviously is not HTML syntax. This is an enhancement to the HTML syntax. And then you give it a handler. I will say change name. That's the name of the function. So you just give it the name of the function, and here in this function, I say change name. And in there, I will change name to, universe. All right. So at this point, if you are a React developer, you will be thinking, really, you can do that? You can just assign a new value to a variable? In Svelte, you can. I clicked. Okay. Let me just make a trivial change so that and save it. So this is back to every time I make a change, it remounts, it recompiles and remounts. Let me do this again. So here's the button that has a handler, and in the handler, I am simply reassigning a new value to a variable. It used to be world, now it's universe. So as soon as I click change name, it changes. This should delight you, because there is no set state, there is no use state, there is definitely no reducer or action creator or anything like that going on. This is obviously local state, and we will talk about global state also, but this is local state, and this is pretty good. Now let me get more let me do something more interesting than that. What if there was an input box? So input, and then let's give it a placeholder. Type name here, and if you want to bind two-way binding the value of this input box to name, then you do this, and now this name variable that has an initial value of world could be changed to change name, is bound in several different places. If I hit change name, this world will become universe in both of these places. So it's literally bound everywhere. And now if I start typing here, JITESH, so on every keystroke. So what is happening is this bind value is a bidirectional binding. If name changes, then the input box changed like this. And if the input box, if you start typing into the input box, then it changes the variable and that wherever it is used. Now, this, you need to focus on this a little bit, because I'm trying to convey something here, that Svelte is truly reactive. React, the framework that has reactive in its name, is not reactive, because you have to inform the framework that I changed something through set state or use state or something like that, right? You don't have to do that to Svelte. Svelte is a compiler. At compile time, what is really happening is every time someone assigns to name here, So it detects that you're assigning to name, or it detects that you have a two-way bound value here. And in this case, it detects that you're reading name. So the compiler, parses all these situations, and it injects some code in all of those places. You can actually see what code it injects by just clicking on this JS output, but we won't go over there. But it's very small. It's a one-liner code that it injects and says, okay, you are assigning a value to universe, and it converts. Think of it like it internally basically says set state name equal to universe, something like that, along those lines. But this is easy for local state. This kind of a thing is, you might think of it as a parlor trick, or it's nice, but it's all right. But no, this becomes very, very important if you had a large form, for example. In things like React, it's very common for people to create large, to use large frameworks just to manage a form. So let me show you an example. So imagine if you had a customer object, and in that customer object, you had all kinds of things like, I'm just going to keep my life simple. I'm going to print customer as JSON data. Okay. So I'll just say JSON.stringify customer. So this way it shows, okay. And then okay, so this will represent the customer. Imagine if you had a form, and you have input, bind. So in React, imagine what you would be doing, but here I'm just going to do customer dot name. So, and then this is, so let's put a placeholder. Customer name. Okay, let's say input, bind value. Like this, you can keep going. So let's say customer dot email, placeholder, customer. That's it. I mean, two of these will suffice for example. And then you say customer name is Jitesh Doshi, email is jitesh@spinspire.com. Does that delight you? I mean, you see the significance of this. Now try doing this in React. All right. So this is the power of a compiler. So this is a result of Svelte being compiler driven. Everything is much easier. You will notice when you write very large Svelte applications, also you will realize there's very little code. There's hardly any code. This is total code. And then when you are ready to actually submit it, okay, let's submit it. So I'm in button, save, let's say. You would have a save button, and on form you would say on submit, right? And say submit handler, let's say. Now in the real world, you'd probably be doing some Ajax there, but let's just see how this works. And for purposes of this demo, I'll just say console log, right? Right. Okay. So let's see what this is. I say Jitesh@spinspire.com. And if I now hit, that's your object. Nothing could be simpler than that. So, and this is what you would be posting. I mean, if you had an API, you would just say fetch, method equal to post, whatever. I mean, you know what, and then you would be giving data equal to customer, something like that. So you will, so as a result, the code for Svelte is very small amount of code, because and the amount of learning that you have to do for Svelte is also very minimal. So let me show you a little example. So here is, wait, not this. Okay, hold on. Yes. So this is my little Firebase example. What was, okay, give me 1 second. Before I go to Firebase, yeah, let me do a simpler example, actually simpler than that, a little bit of fun. Give me a second, I need to bring this down. How do I unmaximize this? It's not letting me unmaximize. Let me try. How the heck do I get this out of here? Okay, I'll just do this.
I'm not sure. Does anybody know?
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. This will work. Okay, so if I go to localhost 5000, so now this time earlier I was running that in a REPL, but now I'm running it on my machine. Okay, so this is what I did was, I'll just explain to you what I did. I basically go to svelte.dev, which is here, and you write some code, and you can simply hit this button here, download zip file. And if you do that, it gives you a complete app. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. That's not exactly how I do it, but we'll get to it. But so here it is. Let me just show you the structure of this project first. The structure of the project is very simple. There's a package.json in which everything is a dev dependency. You will notice that everything is a dev dependency. In fact, this one dependency that is not dev is wrong. Should have been dev dependency. Everything is a dev dependency. Okay, because Svelte is a compiler, it's not a runtime library. So everything is a dev dependency. And then there is this script dev. By the way, Svelte's preferred bundler is rollup. So that's okay. You don't have to worry about any of those things. You just run the dev, and that is what I have running here. And this is the, okay. Now the entry point of a Svelte program is whatever you want it to be, usually main.js. So here there is main. I am creating an app instance, which is app.svelte. And then I tell where to mount it in document.body. And it will actually, so if you look at the view source, there is, this is all there is. So I have an empty body, and we are targeting document.body. So app as a component ends up in document.body. So, and here's the app. And this is a very simple app, but it's actually very powerful. So this is, I am using this joke API called Chuck Norris joke API. And what I do is I have a very simple function, fetch joke. It's an async function. It awaits on fetch from this URL. This fetches a random joke. And then, so you got the response, you parse it as JSON, which you await on. And then after all, everything is done, you just say JSON, whatever you get. Let me just show you what you get in here. And paste. So here it is, type success, value is equal to something, and then ID. And then here's the joke. The joke has a one-liner. Chuck Norris knows Victoria's Secret. So that kind of these are a little bit silly jokes, funny jokes. But anyway, so we fetch that, and all we are doing is assigning a local variable, and that local variable is displayed. And every time you overwrite and reassign this local variable through Ajax, you get a joke. Chuck Norris did not lose his virginity or whatever. So it's fetch another joke, another joke. Every time I'm clicking that, it's executing an Ajax request. After the Ajax request is finished, it reassigns a new value to this variable, and you get the variable. So Chuck Norris doesn't see dead people; he makes people dead. So
Very true.
well, the point is, most of this code is just fetch code. There is only one line of these. These two are basically you are displaying a variable value, and then you have an on click. Okay, so that's one thing. Better than that, let me terminate this. I'm going to stop this one. Okay, and instead go to this other one. Here, oops, not this one. Is it this one? Yeah, it is this one. Sorry, never mind. So this is my Firebase demo, and let me just show you what it does before I get into the specifics. And this is where global state. I want to demo you global state, shared state, and you'll see how delightful that is. So it just finished compiling, and now it's running on port 5000. So I reload, and there it is. The top part of it is just boilerplate. I put that on all my applications. By the way, Svelte supports TypeScript, so you can write your code in TypeScript. In fact, that's what I have done here. And you will see that if you want to write your, remember Svelte components are basically script, tag, like that, style, and then any amount of HTML. So if your script has lang equal to TS in it, then it can be written in TypeScript, which is what I have here. Although I'm not using some types. I should have been better about it. But here's the thing. I have a little utility file called Firebase. And from where I'm collecting Firebase, and actually, I'm not even using Firebase, am I? Yeah, I'm not using it, so I could get rid of that. So I have an exported function called collection. You give it the name of the collection, and you got this object. This object is a store. And when something is a store, you will notice I'm using to-dos over here at the bottom as $to-dos. This is another of the Svelte magic, where you have something called store. A store is basically an object that not only you can share between components, it's global. I mean, as long as you can have a reference to it, you can share it. But more importantly, you can be reactive to it. So if to-dos object changed in any way, the value of the store changed in any way, this entire template would repaint itself. Now, so if you had, imagine if you had another component which was modifying the value of the store, this would keep repainting. So that's the other thing about Svelte. Svelte does not have virtual down. It simply surgically modifies down. So, so every time to-dos changes, this for each loop will rerun. So let me, now what is behind the to-dos? To-dos is coming as a collection from Firebase. And here's my Firebase. I mean, this is my code. This is pretty short amount of code, right? So I'm creating a store, a writable store. And the collection, the Firebase collection is represented by the store. I cannot get into all the, everything about the store. But the point is, this store is synchronized with Firebase data bidirectionally, which means if the data changes, the store automatically changes. And I can prove it to you in a second. So let me just delete these things. It's actually, this is my Firebase. And if I look at this to-dos collection, there are 2 of these. And if I click on that, you see there is 3. And if I go back to to-dos and I click this one, this is called 2. 3 and 2 are in there. And as you can see, this is 3 and 2. Let me delete all of them. Now, if I come back here, Firebase, of course, has all of them deleted. It's empty. I type a new to-do, say learn, right? I hit save, and it's actually inserting in Firebase. Learn Svelte, right? And completed is off. Now, the minute I check this checkbox, it went strike through because that's a class that I've added. But more importantly, completed became true here. This is in Firebase. Now, this is not one way. This is 2-way. Imagine if I inject a new record. If through some other application, completely unrelated application, you added a new document here. And let's add a new document. Document ID, I'll leave. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, needs a little. Yeah, auto ID. Make it auto ID. And then I say title is learn Demo. By the way, I'm very much interested in Demo also. So let's say that's one of them. And I add, say completed is true. Boolean true. So as you can see, I'm manipulating Firebase, right? So I hit save, and back in my application, I already have learned Demo with checked, completed. So the point is, this is happening. I obviously did not reload this page, and you will notice that there is nothing in this app.svelte which says, oh, listen for changes in $to-do. That's because it is a store, and that store is synchronized with this collection in this index.ts in Firebase folder. So when I created store, I said to-dos is a collection from my Firebase database, and name of the collection is to-dos. And from that point onward, anything that happens to that Firebase database, it gets automatically shown here. So this makes your applications very simple and very, very, what's the opposite of verbose, I guess, succinct. Yeah, that. Which means fewer bugs. Your application surface area is much far smaller. So other than that, I mean, I'm slowly running out of things to say, because what you saw is pretty much what you have to learn about Svelte. If you learn stores, and
how do you do composition where you create a component and then you consume that component in, I don't know if you've got an example, but I'm interested in creating like a subcomponent with capability or behavior, and then bidirectionally binding that in a parent component, right? Like,
good, very good question. So let me do something very quickly. I'm just going to make a copy of this app.svelte, okay? So because I'm going to gut it. So let's gut the whole thing. I'm going to show you how do you. So composition is actually pretty sweet. So Svelte has this concept of what is it called? I'm just going to remove everything from it. Okay, I just saved it. App is completely empty. So nothing in there. Okay. All right. Let's get back to the. So your question was about composition. So there is some. So Svelte has the concept of slots. Let's create a tab group. How about that? Tab groups with tabs, right? So imagine I create a folder called tabs, and then in there is a tab group.svelte. Okay, so this is a component. We'll put some stuff in it, but first let's import that. So import tab group from /tabs /tab group .svelte. Okay, you got tab group. Now let's put the tab group in here. Tab group. Okay. Now tab group can have, let's say it has some content. Let's call it tabs . Okay. At this point, you will see nothing. Why? Because tab group ignores its content, its children. So that's not nice. It's not nice to ignore your children. So all you have to do is you can say render my children, render my default slot. So basically your children or your child content is your default slot. So here I'm rendering the slot. But usually the whole reason why you're doing this, you usually want to wrap things in something. So let's say div.tabs is a class, right? And now, as soon as I save that, I see tabs . So that's the beginning of tabs. So let's now actually give it real tabs. So we will say tab, and this will be tab 1. Oops, not tab. All right, and then let's say just for the sake of realisticness, 2. Okay. Now we have to create another component called tab. Let's do that. So new file, tab.svelte, and it does pretty much the same thing. It renders its default slot and div.tab, singular, of course. So it's going to render its default slot. And now if I save it, I should wait. So is it going to show anything?
You have
So
to
tab
import.
group.
You have to import tab, I think.
Sorry. Yes, you're right. You are right. So I import tab from tab.svelte. All right, so I save that, and yeah, whenever Zoom is running, okay, yeah, now you got 2. So what is happening is tab group has 2 children. What does tab group do? It simply renders the slot, and then tab, it does the same thing, renders the slot, right? Now, let's keep going. Obviously, you will need tab bodies, right? So tab content, let's call it. And this is the content of tab 1, and another one, content of tab 2. So if I now go to tab, yeah, I need to create, right? Yeah, I create a new file called tab content. That's Svelte, right? And it does pretty much the same thing. This guy doesn't even put it in a wrapper, no wrapper, and you'll see why. So it simply renders slot, nothing more than that. It's kind of almost silly, but we'll see why. So so tab group is this. Let us.
You got to import tab content.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Tab content. Save. So once you do that, you should see content of tab 1 and content of tab 2. Simple. Obviously, real tabs will show only one content, not all of them. So let's fix that. So this is where we will create a store, but how will we share the store? Now, you could create a global variable and store the store in that global variable. This is the kind of things that people in React do. But I mean, not always, but sometimes they do. We can do something better, which is store it in a context. A context is a variable that is stored only between parents and children. That's what we will do. So if I go to tab group, I can create, and I just say script, and I create import from Svelte set context, and you give it a name. Set context is basically setting the value of a context variable. Now, so this will be active tab, and active tab, its initial value, whatever you want to set it, that will be our store. So let's import the store. Let's create a store from Svelte store, and we will import writable. So writable stores are basically something you can, they're bidirectional, you can write to them. So I say const active, or let's just call it store, is equal to writable, and its initial value is undefined. So nothing is active actually, which of course you can change. And let's store the store in there. That's it. So once you do this, let's save this. You can go to the other like tab itself, and because tab is a child of tab group, it can receive context. So instead of set, these guys will be getting context. So let's get context, and it doesn't need to import writable, and it just says, now when this guy comes, he says my store is equal to get context active tab, and obviously it doesn't have to provide value. So these are children. All children will receive the context, and it just has to know the same name. That's all. Now we can say I am an active tab. Let's do this. Oh, we'll do that later. The active tab part of it. But let's put these tabs in a row rather than, you know. So we just say style tab. If you are of type tab, class tab, then your display is inline block. That way they show up in a single row and not two. So once you do that, you see 1, 2 like that together. But of course now they are also all showing up within the same div, which means tab group needs to do something. Tab group needs to, so it's rendered its slot, all of them together. What is happening is tabs and tab content are all being mixed up. So the solution is you create 2 slots instead of 1, meaning to say, let's just put a span, and the span you say this is a slot. This is not the default slot. It is a new slot, and it has a special name called tabs. And you move these 2 tabs inside that. And the rest of this is also in the slot, but this is the default slot. So now when you go back to tab group, you say, let me render my slot named tabs here, and then I render my default slot, which has no name, outside. And that I wrap in something called tab content class. Once you do that, you will see. So these 2 tabs are showing up at the top, content is showing up at the bottom. So this is the tabs, and this is the tab content, but it is still showing all the content. It's very easy how to hide the one that is not active. All you have to do is go. I'll duplicate this code. Just like I got this code, I simply come back here and say, now you got the store, and I say if $store is equal to my ID. So you can give it, if $store is equal to my ID, then show me. So this pound sign if is special syntax, basically it's conditional. And keep in mind, it doesn't just hide the slot, it simply doesn't even render it. It's unrendered, unmounted. So obviously ID is unrecognized, so we have to create a prop. In React, you would think of this as a prop. So, and it uses a special keyword, export let ID. all you have to do is make sure that the ID is same between the tab and the tab content. So I gave both of them this ID, and now I go to the app and say, just make sure that they all have the same ID. ID is equal to, let's say, 1, and this ID is equal to 2. Make sure you have the same ID. ID is equal to 1. Doesn't have to be called ID. You could call it key, for example. You could call it anything you want. Let's call it ID, since we started saying that. So 2. Now these IDs are matching. So let's save this. This guy says that ID is not valid. Why is that? Let me see. Oh, because I use TypeScript, that's why it doesn't like that. That's okay. Let's not worry about that. So now, as you can see, when tab content disappeared, it disappeared because, oops, sorry. The tab content disappeared because I have said only if the store is equal to my ID. Nobody is setting it. So let's go to tab and say, when you click on the tab, so on click, simple, you just say $store is equal to my ID. Store make my ID active. So as soon as I do that, from this point, if I click 1, it says content of tab 1. If I click 2, shows content of tab 2. This is obviously not very pretty to look at. So we could just say, hey, each tab has a padding of 1 EM, and it has a border of solid black 2 pixel. So, wait, what happened here? Oh yeah, so 1 and 2. Okay, so this is good. We can further say if you are active, which means when they're active. So you can assign a class conditionally, class :active when $store is equal to my ID. The value of store is equal to my ID, then I'm active. We just said .tab .active. In that situation, color, the foreground color is white, and background color, let's make it black.
Spell active correctly in your class name on 13.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I will. Yep. So I save that, and now neither of them is active. I click 1, it becomes active. I click 2, this one becomes active. And now the only thing left to do is make a default one active. So what if tab group said that it had something like called active ID or active tab equal to, let's say, 2, just for the sake of, so it doesn't have that such a thing. So we'll say, let's give it an export let, which is a prop, active tab is a prop that you will receive. And now when you create the store, you just say active tab, whatever was passed in as active tab, make it active. So now 2 is active. Wait, no, 2 is not active. My bad. Did I save it properly? 2 should be active. Okay, it didn't quite work. The active tab is the initial value. And here is active tab equal to 2. Export let active tab. Active tab is the initial value. And it should have shown 2. Let me check why. That's strange, isn't it? So here's a debugging technique. You basically can say, oh, everything inside inside the HTML is reactive. But if you want to have JavaScript code that is reactive, you prefix it with this label called $:. And now you can just say, every time $store changes, the value of store changes, please print it. And this line will get repeated every time it changes. So let me just now go into the console.
Hey, Jitesh, can you put a breakpoint?
Yes, we can. Oh, there was a tab group created without expected prop active tab. Oh, so it didn't even see the active tab. Why is that? What is this? Did I misspell this? This looks right to me. Oh, I haven't saved it. This is unsaved. That's why. Okay, that's why. Boom. Oh yeah. So you were saying about. Oh, by the way, look, store is 2. The minute I click on this one, store is 1. I click on this one. So this is how you create, reactive statements. These are reactive statements. They will react to whenever. And by the way, this is like use effect. Use effect in React, but in use effect you have to give it an array of variables that might change, right? Not so in Svelte. Svelte is a compiler. It knows what variable you are changing and what variable you are depending upon. So it is automatically. This is like saying use effect array depends on store. So yes. Now back to Jyoti, your question. Can we put a breakpoint? Yes, we can. Let me show you. Where's the sources? Yeah. So I could say tab.svelte. Yes. So there's tab. It's very small screen. Sorry, but so I could say put a breakpoint every time this thing on click is executing, right? So I put a breakpoint here. Wait. It's not actually doing that. Why? I'm surprised because it does. Oh, yes, I know why.
You have to go to the JavaScript.
Now, the problem is there are 2, and I do not know why, but there are 2 of these. I have to always select the second one. Then it becomes, see?
Okay. All right, cool.
It's always that twice. So now, every time so I cannot put a breakpoint here because there isn't a proper function there, right? But if I separated that into a function, but in any case, I could just put a breakpoint here and get context. And so when I reload,
cool, thank you.
It stops there. So if I had a longer function, I would be able to do that. But here, this is not. Okay. So now, of course, if the tab group, where is that? Yeah. So it should probably we should style it again to make it look like a tab. So you say, whatever the tabs container is, make it a border, bottom, solid, black, 2 pixel. If you do that, we'll see what I mean by that. Yeah, so you got bottom, and now so since we have double borders, we can just say border, bottom, and the tab itself is none. If you do that, now they look like real tabs, right? So, Brady, you asked about composition. Is this, does that answer the composition question in a sense? So the composition is basically through slots.
Yeah, I love it. That was an awesome, awesome demo. I mean, we got 3 subcomponents, and it's pretty straightforward. You just import them and use them.
Yeah, and look at where the code. What is the code? Look at where is the code? Style, of course, style is style. You don't count that as code.
Right.
This is code, and this is code.
Yeah.
That's it. That's tab. Tab group is, well, there's some code where you're creating. The console log doesn't count. So So you create a context, you create a store, you set it as a context, and that makes it shareable across the parent-child hierarchy.
Yeah.
And that's the code.
So is that also, suppose you had a subcomponent that, let's just say it was an input box, right? That was styled an appropriate way, had a placeholder, a float label, for example, that when you put the, when you put the cursor in the text box, that the placeholder would float above the box and become a label of the, vertical label. I could see making a subcomponent for that, but I want that subcomponent to be able to inform double bind, right? Two-way binding to my parent, so that my parent could use the same binding mechanisms to, to get the value of the child when the child changed, and vice versa, obviously, from the parent. I'd like to...
Excellent point. And the answer is yes, very much so. So anything that any exported property of any prop of child can be bound, two-way bound. So, all right, let's say tab group, although it has access to the writable. I'm just trying to think of what's the best way to. Let's say the app. Yeah, that's a good way. Let's say app wanted. You remember, app does not have access to your active tab, but it wanted access. It's as simple as this. Let active tab and bind active tab. You don't even have to say active tab twice. You can say it like this, or the shorthand is this. Watch this. And then if you want to see every time it changes, let's do a reactive declaration. Console.log active tab is equal to whatever the active tab is. So here the app component is doing two-way binding with one of the properties. If I save this to the console, this is the initial value. This is the first time. But if I click on this, oh, this is not working. Hold on. Let me see. Why?
Do we have to go to tab group and somehow export active tab as a? It's already.
No, it is already exported. You're right. Yeah. You are on the right track.
Looks like it's hard coded to 2.
No. It's the initial value only.
But it's
hold on.
bound.
Okay.
It's bound.
Yeah. So all that is missing is we are not reacting to store value changing. That's all we have to do. So therefore we say reactive statement active tab is equal to $store. So now you are modifying your own prop every time store changes. So save this, and now if I click this, see, that was because no one was, the tab group was not modifying the value. It was just taking the initial value and never going back to it and updating it. With this, you just updated it. So now you click around, and every time you click around, it's doing that. So yes, I mean, I hope you guys are excited. Don't get me wrong. I have been doing React development for 3-4 years now. And in fact, a couple of my major projects are in React. So I know React pretty well, but it doesn't compare. It just doesn't compare to how little code I have to do. And the power, like the expressiveness is very impressive. You can see it yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot more concise even than Angular as well. What about the stuff you get with React, like time capsule and being able to, you know what I mean, see changes over time? It has the maturity of Svelte grown to, you know, to see the add-ons and I guess the writable stores that actually do time tracking.
Yeah. So here's the thing. That comes from Redux, not from React, right? And you can use Redux with Svelte if you want to. All you have to do is wrap your Redux stores in Svelte store. And I showed Svelte stores are ridiculously easy to create. I mean, the $sign is with $sign you are subscribing to read it. But if you wanted to update it, like update a store, you would say store.set. Okay, so set to whatever value you want to set to. Or if you wanted to update after reading the value of itself from the current value, you can say store.update, and then you give it a callback saying current value, and then the new value, return the new value. So you could say curval plus 1, let's say. I mean, so the thing is, now what you would be doing is you would be putting this kind of a code inside your Redux reducers. So your reducer will.
I was just going to ask a couple quick questions, Jitesh. Sure. You did a presentation for us back in February on Sapper along with this. And back then, and I'm not sure this is something they've addressed in 6 months since the last time you presented this, was that there were some edge cases where there were some things you could do in Angular and React that you didn't have that capability in Svelte, and or at least not in Sapper. And I forget what those were. I was just going to see if you could refresh my memory about what exactly those features that are, and whether or not they're actually in Sapper now.
So, no, I myself don't remember, but I don't think there is anything. There is nothing really. There is one thing that is a little harder to do in Svelte, which is in Svelte, there is one component per file. That can be seen as a limitation. So you end up with, if you have lots and lots of components, you end up with lots and lots of files. But let me address that concern, because did you notice how I have a folder called tab and it has these?
Yes.
So the right way to do that, instead of importing everything in app.svelte, one by one at a time like this, everything has a proper technique. So the right way is put index.js in your folder and say export default as tab from tab. If you do it like this, and do all three of them, tab content. So yes, you still have all this many files, but yeah. So tab content, tab group. Okay. So you save this. Now back in app.svelte, you don't have to do multiple imports like this. You just say import tab group and tab and
nice.
Tab content. So,
nice.
And it works just fine. Okay.
Okay. One more question, and that has to do with one of the features in Vue that I like is you have the capability of doing essentially progressive enhancement, where you can do, maybe you just have like one widget you want to do that requires some type of interactivity where it makes sense to use view, but the rest of your web page essentially is static. And so you can just kind of add view as you need it. You could do, you know, a complete spa-based application if you want to, or you can just do one little thing. And I was curious if you're just trying to do like a quick little widget or something that like handles like, you know, kind of like live search results or something like that, and like one little component and stuff like that. How would you use Svelte to do that? Or does it make sense to use Svelte to do something small like that?
Absolutely, it does. So Svelte compiles to a bundle, okay, JavaScript. So if you wanted to do that, you would basically, if you see how this is, I mean, the kind of black magic that we are all used to in React, you don't have that in Svelte. Let me just show you. What I mean is, in React, your index.html has, you know, black magic markers or containers, right? Mine doesn't. Mine simply has bundle.js, and this bundle.js came from the rollup compiler, the bundler. So to answer your question, what you would do is your main you would have multiple bundles. Let's say bundle foo.js, and you may have, let's say you have two Svelte apps, bundle foo.js and bundle bar.js. And what you would do is, in your main, so one of them, let's say one of them is it targets ID foo and the other one targets ID bar or something like that. So you just say, or better yet, you can be better than that. You can say data target equals foo. Find yourself ID foo, and then data target is equal, this goes to, sorry, the other way around. This is foo and the other is bar. So you just give yourself a div foo, and then similarly div bar. So these will be two completely separate and independent Svelte apps. You can even compile them and import them from different directories somewhere. And then in the main, in the main.js, you would say, instead of targeting document body, you would say, you know, document dot query selector, whatever the value of data target is. Okay, and you of course have to get the data target somehow, right? Right, you get that through by querying the script itself, right? So this way you can put any number of little Svelte apps inside a single HTML page. You can compile multiple apps. By the way, Rollup is a very powerful bundler. It can compile an array of applications with very similar structures, and it will be producing bundle foo and bundle bar. Now I haven't I did not even mention Sapper, but David did. But Sapper is basically it's a client and server side combo of a framework. So meaning to say Sapper is a Node.js and Svelte framework. So Node.js is server side, Svelte would be client side. And by the way, Svelte is all this stuff about isomorphic. Svelte has been doing that for ages. I mean, it doesn't even talk about it much. So on the server side, it treats, because it doesn't do virtual DOM, it treats HTML as strings. It generates HTML strings on the server side. On the client side, it treats HTML in terms of DOM. So it knows the difference. You know that when it's compiling and when it's running inside Node.js, it behaves one way. When it's running inside the browser, it behaves slightly differently. But the end result is same, which means all your client-side programs are readily runnable on the server side. You were going to say something, David?
No, that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would recommend you guys to check out Svelte and also Sapper. Sapper basically it puts Svelte on steroids because it. If you have heard of Next.js, then Sapper is Next.js for Svelte, where it comes with a router. The router is client-side and server-side router, meaning to say when you click around on the internal links, it is doing that, you know, in a single-page application mode, SPA mode. While if you force a full-page reload, it still works because at that point it does server-side rendering and gets you the page anyways. And from that point onward, you start clicking around and it's all client-side. So pretty powerful. I don't think we have
show me more about Rollup. This is the first I heard about Rollup. It sounds like it's the new Webpack.
Yes, it's actually better than Webpack, much better. So Rollup is basically, this is rollup.config.js. You run it, you can run Rollup either through command line or otherwise by simply, you can just say rollup -c, as in use a config file, which defaults to rollup.config.js, but it could be, you could give it a different one. And then you can say rollup watch, which is what. So let me control C this because the same thing is already being done in my package.json.
Right.
There.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Now
you
what
just
is
do npm run dev and you'll get Rollup. Yep.
Yes. Now Rollup is already using rollup.config.js for its configuration. The only thing you have to export from Rollup is a configuration object, and Rollup will do the rest. It wants to know this entry point. It wants to know what the output will be. Output can be IIFE, meaning to say, you know, immediately invoke function expression, or it could be also module. No, not module. What is it called? Yeah, ESM. ES6 module. So that the name, I don't think name matters. And this is output file name. So yes, this, what I would say, like you have, you know, package main is the entry point. You're getting that from. So I would probably generate this as, I could do this.
Does it do tree shaking for you and everything?
Yes, yes, it does. It does.
It certainly looks easier to configure than Webpack.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. And oh, by the way, I have a roll-up tutorial on my YouTube channel. It goes line by line. It doesn't use any boilerplate. It writes from scratch. Anyway, so you would do something like this. And now, instead, what you should do is
I think line 16 is, line 16, I think is that right? Format module, or did you mean IIFE? On 16.
Yeah. IIFE, sorry.
Yep, there you go. Okay.
What I'm saying is, you could, the rollup config is simply an object. That's all it is. You see, it's an object from big. And you have an array of plugins. So these are all the plugins. There are many of them. But if you had a complex build system, you would simply say, turn this into an array. So this.
Just create an array of objects.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously nobody should be creating it like this. They should be writing a function to create that array of objects.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say create config, and it will return an object of config, whatever it goes in here. And this will be params, param1, param2, whatever the parameters are. Once you are done, you just say export default array of objects,
Mm-hmm.
and that will be create config with parameter one and 2.
I see. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then you can just keep doing this, right? Or better yet, that's not really the way I would do it. I would do it. Okay. I have an array of parameters. Array of objects.
And you put that in a loop.
And then say map.
Yep.
Map. Right. And then export default that. So
Yep.
I mean, there are many ways of doing that. So I don't want to. So this is that's rollup. Rollup is very, very powerful. I mean, and it is so powerful and so easy to understand what it is doing, how it is doing. I would strongly recommend that too. So this is the thing. The Svelte, rollup, and Sapper, all three of them are created by the same person, Rich Harris, who, by the way, was a journalist. Puts all of us developers to shame, really. The guy is so productive. He has created 3 major frameworks, probably more. Right? These 3 are actually successful. And all the while holding a journalist job at the New York Times and creating all these things. So anyway, I mean, he's quite impressive. So I would recommend you to just search him on YouTube and look at some of his presentations. They're very impressive. One of them is called Rethinking Reactivity, and another one is called Computer Build Me an App. Both of them highly recommended. Any case, so I am obviously very excited about Svelte. I think I use Svelte for all the applications where I have the choice, which means all of my internal applications as well as those where the client doesn't care what I use, because that saves me so much time and saves my client money and gives them better performance and makes it more, maintainable.
Hey, Jitesh, has there been any published libraries, component libraries, like a material library or anything?
Yes, there is. So there is Svelte UI, there is Svelte, which is Svelte Material UI, and there is Svelte Bootstrap. There are all kinds. I mean, yeah, there are plenty of Svelte. I mean, you can just Google it. It's all there. Yeah, there is a special router. So I mentioned Sapper. Sapper is server side and client side router, like routing on both ends of it. But then there is a client side only router called Routify. Again, I have videos on that. So that one, it does almost everything that Sapper does on the server side, but this one does completely on the client side. It's very powerful. In the end, the entire Svelte community is focused on doing more with less code, and that's not just a. I mean, you most people. I mean, if I had not seen Svelte, I would have thought, of course, that's silly. Why would anybody write more code than they have to? Right? But the thing is,
code's always better.
Yes, but the question is, why are people writing some more code? Others are those who are not using, either they don't know about Svelte, or they know but their client is telling them to not write in Svelte. They want some Facebook, big enterprise, big company behind it, React and so on and so forth. Or, I believe that humans are all good and all that. So I don't want to believe this, but but I've actually seen real evidence of people coding in React because they want to protect it, gives them job security.
It's like the expression. Yeah, it's like that expression. It's like nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. It's like
well, yeah. Not just that. The thing is, well, that might be the thinking of a development manager, yes. But a developer is probably doing. Some developers are doing React simply because they know that's where the jobs are. But also, even if they got a chance to do things in Svelte versus React, if the client gave them a choice, they might go with React simply thinking that, hey, if I do it in Svelte, it's too easy to maintain, and they can replace me with the next developer very easily. While if I do it in React, it's like 10 times more code, which means more work for me.
Yeah. So what about? So I see Svelte obviously works with the DOM. Is there a mode of Svelte that works without a DOM? Is there a native? You know, like you know, I'm looking at.
For instance, like. So as an example, like with React, there's React Native. If you want to build native applications, they even have, I think, like a command line. Yeah, they have a command line framework, which I don't know why you'd want to use React to write a command line, but they have a framework for doing that, or it's based off of React.
Yes, so you're right. So there is a Svelte native. So for mobile apps, native mobile apps. So Svelte native is basically all of these React native and Vue native, Svelte native. All these are basically native script combined, you know. So, and there are components for that. So yeah, I've never used it, so I don't really know.
No, I mean that sounds promising. Of course, now I'm interested in Svelte under Electron. You know what I mean? I'm all about simplifying, you know, lines of code and simplifying code in general. Yeah, React has got me a little bit flummoxed relative to some of the things I need to jump through in order to do, you know, state management and all that kind of stuff. So I'm, you know, I love to see more observable type of patterns. I like the TypeScript. I'm a TypeScript fan, so I like that integration. Yeah, this is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So yeah,
thank you very
feel free to go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say that. Thanks very much, Jitesh, for doing the presentation tonight. I really appreciate it.
So yeah, once again, go to youtube.com/Spinspire, and there are all these videos. Watch them, or you can email me at jitesh@spinspire.com.
I'll post a link to that to the meetup event for tonight's meeting, so everybody has access to it.
Yeah, and trust me, if anybody gives you a hard time that, oh, Svelte is okay for small applications, send them to me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. Good. Thank you all.
Great job, Jitesh. Always.
Thank you very much.
From you.